الحمد لله الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن ربك لبالمرصاد إن ربك لبالمرصاد سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in one verse of the Quran, He cites that we are in His view, in plain sight. And mirsad is when you have an ocular on a gun and you're hunting, and the full attention of the hunter is on his prey right before he pulls the trigger. That level of intensity and that level of attention is how minutely and how intently Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching everything we do. لَقَدْ أَحْصَاهُمْ وَعَدَّهُمْ عَدًّا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is counting every single second. He's not even counting the actions. لَقَدْ أَحْصَاهُمْ. He has counted you from the top of your head to the tip of your toes. Everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is counting. And ahsa is different from adda, because ahsa is when a person counts something and protects the count. That's why وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. Right? That if you were to count, then you will never be able to encompass it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching intently. He is counting intently. And then in another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا كَانَ رَبُّكَ نَسِيًّا. And I don't forget. You sinned and forgot, but I didn't forget. Allah doesn't forget. Right? He does not forget. That's something we need to take very seriously. وَنَضَعُ الْمَوَازِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ فَلَا تُظْلَمُ نَفْسٌ شَيْئًا. And then مَنْ يَأْمَنْ مِثْقَالَ خَرْدَلٍ وَكَفَى بِنَا حَاسِبِينَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I'm enough. I'm enough to take your hisab. I'm enough to account. I'm enough to audit you. I'm enough to reckon you. I don't need anyone else. One-on-one in front of Allah. That's absolutely terrifying. It should be absolutely terrifying. Nothing will be lost. Not a single word. And one day people will come and they'll bring some baggage. Some people will bring their iman, and you need two things there's very knowledgeable people here. I'm a simple person. You bring two simple things. You have to bring your iman, and you bring some good deeds, and hope that your good deeds will outweigh your bad deeds. And these two things, iman and amal salih, this is what we want to keep in our pocket. And when someone has something that they value, then they take a lot of time to protect something that they value. Right? No one has anything. Like today we had workers working at home. I had to go to an event. My wife had to go to an event. My daughter had to go to an event. No one was at home. And we had workers remodeling at the house. So we're like, what do? There's miscommunication. I said, just leave it. There's nothing. What are they going to take from the house? There's nothing there. Right? There's nothing valuable, so they can just be there. Right? I wasn't worried. But if you had something worried, you make sure we lock the door. Right? You make sure that you put it in a safe. People who are worried about their land, they create very extensive defense systems that protect their land. They create iron domes. They put on these radar systems that even if there is a small movement, that it will show up on the radar because they feel like they have something to protect. وَمَا قَدْرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. If we really care about Allah and care about standing in front of Him on the last day, we also need to turn on some radars. Right? You can't go through life, النَّاسُ نِيَامٌ. You can't go through life sleeping and just wake up the day that there's qiyamah and say, oops. Because the saddest word in any language is what if. Just be too late. كَلَّا إِنَّهَا كَلِمَةٌ هُوَ قَائِلُهَا وَمِنْ وَرَائِهِمْ بَرْزَخٌ إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. Just be too late. Turning on the radar means that a person needs to turn on their mind. They need to think. إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. This is an inflected language because it's supposed to draw you in. It's supposed to ignite your intellect. Right? We don't live a passive existence. And when a person becomes aware, right, and turns on the radar, then you learn a lot of things. Right? There's a lot underneath the hood. When a person is like, a refrigerator and it was just growing mold for a long time, and no one opened it, then you open and look inside and you're like, oh my God, we got some work to do. And every time you peel off one layer, there's something underneath that, and you peel off one layer and there's something underneath that, and you peel off another layer and there's something underneath that. Because it's neglect. So you need the radar. You have to have an awareness about what's happening, what you're doing, and then you have to read the data that comes off the radar. So if you don't, check up on that, then what's the point of recording all that data? And this process of turning on the radar and reading the data is what we call muhasabah. And this was something that existed from the very early. Maybe it wasn't formalized, perhaps formalized later with the mashayikh. But it existed from the time of the sahaba. The sahaba had very sensitive radars. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, who had the iman of Abu Bakr? He would say that I wish I was just a blade of grass. And Omar radiallahu anh, Amirul Mu'mineen, he said if all of the people, and we were told that all of the people are going to hell, are going to Jannah except for one person, that person is going to Jahannam, I'd be worried that I'm that one. Ya Huzaifa, I know that you can't tell me who is in that register of those hypocrites, but just tell me is Omar on that list. They were spiritually aware. They were monitoring themselves. Hanzala radiallahu anh, he was walking the streets and he say, Nafaqa Hanzala. Right? Hanzala has become a munafiq. Why are you munafiq? Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he stopped him. He said, why are you saying this? He said, when we're with the Prophet ﷺ, our spiritual state is like X. And when we go and spend time with our families, our spiritual state is Y. And the difference, then that's just fake when we're in front of the Prophet ﷺ. This is hypocrisy. That's not actually hypocrisy, sarahatul iman, but the idea that they were aware about what was going on inside actually means something. There was one Sahabi, the Prophet ﷺ, everyone knows the story. He said, you want to see a person who's going to Jannah? And Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, you spent 3 days with him. He didn't see that he did anything special. And then when he finally asked him, he said, I can't think of anything special except that before I go to sleep, he went over what his feelings were towards other people. He took that into account. Do I have any envy? Do I have any rancor? Do I have any jealousy? Do I have any anger? And he cleaned it up. And since he cleaned up ahead of time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cleaned up for him inshallah in the akhirah. Umar radiallahu anh, he gave this advice, حَاسِبُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ قَبْلَ أَن تُحَاسِبُوا. that take yourself to account before you are taken to account. And Hasan al-Basri, rahimahullah, he said that, if a person takes account for themselves, then what's that called, ahead of time in the dunya, then it will be good for them in the akhirah. And if you don't, then things will be difficult. Things will be difficult. And Ibn Qayyim used to say that have su'a zan with your own self. Don't go too easy on yourself. There are two things that we have been told to become aware of. Right? One is that we should be aware of Allah. And the second is that we should be aware of our own selves. And sadly, if someone told us to have a conversation about Allah, we couldn't go for more than 2 minutes and we run out of things to say because we have no awareness. And if someone told us, let's talk about your spiritual state, we'd talk for 2 minutes and we'd run out because we have no awareness about our spiritual state. It's an area of our life that we've never even really looked. But if someone talked about this Paul person and Tyson fight, he will talk to you about 50 minutes, 40 minutes. This is why he went down. This is why he did this. This is actually this. And this, I heard this analysis and that analysis. They're aware about everything that doesn't matter. And the one thing that does matter is just love. عَلِمَتْ نَفْسٌ مَا أَحْصَرَتْ. A person will know what they sent forward. عَلِمَتْ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ وَأَخَّرَتْ. Right? It's like you send your things forward and it's just there. You can't recall it. It's done. And that's why this was the way of our mashayikh, that they would sit with their students and they would teach them to take themselves into account. One of the elders, he said, I spent 40 years with my shaykh, and he taught me one thing. What did you get from the 40 years? That's a long time to spend with the shaykh. He said, in 40 years, I learned how to clean my intention. Right? Look in my heart and really know why you're doing what you're doing. It's not so easy. It's not so easy to know why we tie our hijab the way we tie our hijab, or why we pick the pair of shoes that we pick, or why we say the things that we say, or why we laugh at the things we laugh. Just people have no idea. They're just driving recklessly like their car is just going like a go-kart. When you start thinking, then everything changes. So what do you think about? Right, our mashayikh, they were very careful about this. One of them would write everything that he would say during the day, and then the end of the day he would look it over. Right, and this is many mashayikh would say this. This was their general. Routine, that at the end of the day they would go over what they did. And there's a whole discussion about how to do this and the windows of the heart. And I'm not going to go into all of those complexities, but I will say that one way or one place to start this habit of muhasabah is not to look at what we're doing, but to look at what we're feeling. Right? If we can take into account what we feel and what we should be feeling and don't feel, a lot of things will fall into place. Do we feel excited about salah? Do we like to talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do we have shaykh to bring the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ into our life? Brother Ubaidullah, he gave one example. He gave us the importance of the sunnah. But then when you sit with people, I remember one of my teachers, he told us, he said, ecstasy is to find every sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and to bring it into your life. They used to find, people take drugs, cocaine, LSD, amphetamines to get high. These people used to get high off the sunnah. They would stand on the musalla and they would say that, it's a good thing that the people don't know what we experience on this musalla, because if the kings knew, they would come to take over the musalla rather than, the West Bank. Take the West Bank, just leave our musalla. Don't take the West Bank either. And inshallah, Allah will return that as well, inshallah. And much more, inshallah. فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ. Nothing is lost to Allah. Khair. But the idea that they would have feelings, khushu, khuzu, the Prophet ﷺ would, they would cry until it would wet the ground. They would cry until it wet the ground. That's a big deal. Many of us may go our entire life and not shed a tear in salah. That's like going through life and never being in love. Like, why did you live? You just missed the whole story was about something else, and you just missed the whole boat. So taking our feelings into account. When someone said something nice about the other person, did something stir inside and you felt avarice or your jealousy? When you saw someone getting ahead, did you feel your insides tense up? All of these are indications that something is wrong inside. You hear about death, you feel unhappy, you complain, that we start complaining about things. We frustrated, stressed, all of these feelings. A person who's happy with Allah, what is there to stress about? Right? So forget about what's coming in the hand. Look at the hand that's giving it to you. It's ajib. Like, there's nothing to stress about. So one thing is to take our, feelings into account. The other thing to take into account is our thoughts. And this is the first stage of wilaya. يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورِ. What do you think about the whole day? If you had a talk, did you think about what people are going to say afterwards? You shouldn't have even thought about that one time. The fact that the thought occurred that what will people say after my bayan is already a problem. Because that was not what the bayan was about. Right? You're just there as a messenger to parrot that someone told someone who told someone who told someone, and they gave a message, and you just have to give it to the next person. And maybe there'll be from you, and maybe they'll benefit more than you, and maybe that will stand in good stead for you in the akhirah. That's it. Just one thought already is a problem. What do you spend our times thinking about? If all the time is thinking about vacations and making more money and planning about something and Allah's absent, then that's a problem. يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows how the eyes are deceptive and all the dirty thoughts that you think about afterwards. Those thoughts no one really thinks about. وَمَنْ يُرِدْ فِيهَا بِإِلْحَادٍ بِظُلْمٍ نُذِقْهُ مِنْ عَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Imam Ghazali said, be very careful in the haram, because there's one place where even if you make irada of doing something bad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يُرِدْ بِإِلْحَادٍ بِظُلْمٍ نُذِقْهُ مِنْ عَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ, will make them taste of painful punishment. But it's not the Lord of the Kaaba just as much of a Lord when you're sitting in Tampa? And is He not as much as a Lord when you close all the doors and erase all the histories and you're sitting alone in your room? He's watching you just as clearly there as He's in front of Astar al-Kaaba. It's the same Allah. And so the easy take-home message is that these are two things, and this message is to myself first, to take into account about where we are deficient in our feelings and where we're deficient in our thoughts. Right? مَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِرَجُلٍ مِّن قَلْبَيْنِ فِي جَوْفِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't make two hearts in a person's life. Just one heart and one love. And that one love is Allah and what Allah loves. An entire life has to revolve around Allah and the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. وَرِضْوَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ. There is nothing greater than the pleasure of Allah. Ya ayyuhal insan. Like Allah is asking, like, dude, what's wrong with you? مَا غَرَّكَ بِرَبِّكَ الْكَرِيمِ. What seduced you? What was so beautiful? What was more amazing than me? What was so wondrous that you looked somewhere else other than towards me? Just doesn't make any sense. Faisal was just saying, what are those distractions? I don't care. Take the highest level of everything that exists in the world. The best food, the best car, the best house, the best wife, the best everything. That's not equal to what, subhanallah. Right? You put all of that on one pan and you put one subhanallah, right, on one pan, and subhanallah will outweigh it. And so if we realize this, then we would take these things into account. And we then come to the understanding that we're writing the story of our life every single day. Every single day is a new page. You turn the page and you get a chance. I'm just saying that once in a while, ideally daily, we should read that book. We should read the story. And don't write a story that you're shy to even show someone else. That when they come in, you're hiding your history and then you have to cover the book so they don't see. Right? I think it was Tabriz Shams, he said, be like the sun, show one face to all. If you don't do anything wrong, there's nothing to hide. Right? You can just live like the sun and you can shine. Right? Ideally, our story would be like the Prophet ﷺ. Right? Because on the day of Qiyamah, if you don't look what's in the book, you don't know what's in it. Honestly. If you don't look carefully. And I wear many hats. One of the things I did was I was copy editor for Pathoma. Some of you who are in medicine know about Pathoma. And I cannot tell you how detailed and how many times I went over that book to make the user interface perfect, right? I'm also a linguist. So language was sort of my thing. And we went over and over. And every time you think it's perfect, you look back and you find a mistake that wasn't there before. If you know, you never look, you think it's perfect, but nothing's ever perfect. Right? And as a copy editor, I'm telling you, you think it's perfect, there's no errors. You read it over and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I wrote that. Right? This is before Grammarly. So read the book. Right? Read the book before Allah will make you read the book. اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا. That read your book. Tell everyone what you did Sunday night. Tell everyone. Allah will tell you. Read your كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا. You're enough to be your own judge. I don't need to judge you. You'll damn yourself first. Because you know what you did. You know what you thought. And you know what you felt. Right? That's enough of a damning verdict. And then there will be people whose book, you open it, and it will be the Quran. Aisha radiallahu anha, she was asked about the Prophet ﷺ, and she said, كَانَ الْقُرْآنُ يَمْشِي. He was a Quran that was walking. Allahumma asraqna. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us a book like that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to take ourselves to account before He takes us to account. Allahumma hasibna hisaban yasira. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.